you've spoken about the other front, essentially the American front against Israel,
Right.
with particular reference to this current administration. But the truth is, this is not the first anti-Israel administration in U.S. history. And the most obviously anti-Israel administration was the Obama administration. And
Correct.
Biden, of course, was part of that administration.
Absolutely.
Could you speak to that, perhaps?
Yeah, I hear all these people. Look, first of all, let's set the record straight. Countries, particularly imperial countries, have permanent interests, not permanent friendships. Okay? We have to realize that. Number two, we cannot see the United States as anything other than Edom, Rome, if you will. And in that respect, whatever president takes over, we should remember, is an American president, not an Israeli president. Even if the most pro-Zionist Jewish American became president, his actions would be controlled, if you will, or framed within the context of his role as an American president, not an American Jew. We have to remember that. This is why when we see ambassadors like Jack Lew, I'm sorry for even mentioning his name, or Tom Nides, or any of the other, I'm leaving Friedman out of this, of course, but any of the other Jewish American ambassadors here, they weren't interested in us because of their religious affiliation with us. They were Americans. They were diplomats, as the old saying goes, sent abroad to lie for their, honest men sent abroad to lie for their country. Okay, I expect this. The notion that America represents something different from all the other imperial powers that we fought over the millennia is a lethal fallacy, potentially lethal fallacy that we have to dispense with. As far as Joe Biden is concerned, in particular, I hear people saying he's a wonderful guy, he's pro-Zionist, he's pro-Israel.
He's a Christian Zionist.
He's a Christian Zionist.
So we're told, but this is apparently without any basis in fact.
At all. If you look at Joe Biden's record with regard to Israel, it is appalling. We only have to reference two instances to show this. One, his confrontation with Menachem Begin, where he pounded the table and he threatened Menachem Begin, who, Baruch Hashem, rose to the occasion and pushed back. But his true feelings towards Israel, Jews in general, and Israel in particular, were laid bare.
What was the issue at that time with Begin?
That Israel was not coming to heal. That they weren't acting in a manner that was helpful or consistent with American foreign policy in the Middle East. That settlement activity was a threat not just to regional peace, but to global peace. That's where it started from. Back then, Biden was spouting those lies back then with full conviction.
You're speaking about over 40 years ago.
Correct. And lately, and let's come forward. We remember the betrayal of Obama. I want to call him Biden. Obama at the UN in the closing days of the Obama.
You could call him Biden because any intelligent observer knows that this is the third Obama administration.
Quite right. So when Obama betrayed Israel at the UN by not either vetoing or supporting us openly, by just abstaining in a vote, a critical vote
at the end of his second term.
Correct. Biden was all in favor of that and has continued to defend that decision, right? So I've left out in enough other examples that would take up hours to verify exactly where Joe Biden stands on the spectrum of friend or foe of Israel. He is not a friend of Israel. And right now, he is putting the needs of his reelection or the Democratic Party's reelection in 2024 ahead of really the U.S.-Israel special commitment, a special relationship. What do I mean by that? All of these negative things that I just mentioned, including, and I should have added as another aspect of the other front, this call for a Palestinian state. I should have mentioned that also. I'm sorry. And where does this come from? Well, the left, the hard left voters in the United States that are jumping ship as far as the Biden reelection campaign is concerned, and of course, the Muslim vote, particularly in a swing state.
They're trying to guarantee the Muslim voters in Michigan.
Quite right. And so this is why you have these statements by Biden saying he wants this war in Gaza ended at a certain point because the reelection campaign, his reelection campaign, is going to be gearing up at that point. And he can't have Jews committing, Jews, I'm not going to call it Israelis, it's Jews committing genocide against the poor innocent Palestinians in Gaza, while he's trying to kind of corral or call back, rather, the radical left wing of the Democratic Party and the Muslim voters in swing states like Michigan. So he's just throwing us right under the bus, his reelection bus, if you will. And so what kind of ally is that? Not a very good one, not a very honest one, not a very reliable one. And so you still have people arguing, well, look at what like people like Yaakov Katz, for example, the former editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, just quelling over how wonderful Biden in particular and the Americans in general were in supplying us with arms. Well, we had that window of opportunity given the shock of what happened on October 7th. And everybody knew we had maybe a week or two to do whatever we were going to do against Hamas before the wheel turned. And boy, did it turn. So, by the way, full disclosure, I've had this same argument with Donald Trump supporters. I gave a speech a couple of days ago in which a lot of the people in the audience, they're former Americans, were bemoaning the fact that we didn't have Donald Trump as president right now because he was, in their view, the most pro-Israeli, pro-Jewish president we've ever had. And I pointed out to them a couple of things. Number one, he never had a second term. And it's within the second term that you really see the nature, the real nature of a president towards American Jewry and Israel. They don't need us anymore. We are the dispensable people during that second term. And Trump never had it. As far as all the wonderful things that he did over the Golan Heights, sovereignty over the Golan Heights, recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of the Jewish people, all these things, people don't realize he's a real estate guy. And there is always a cheshbon. There's always a bill that has to be paid.
There's always a deal.
A deal. And he termed this whole policy he had, the deal of the century. Okay, well, if you look at the proposed map of Yehuda and Shamron, it's a shooting gallery. It looks like a shooting gallery for our people there. It would have been impossible to maintain our hold on the territories, short of an outright war, if that plan had actually been implemented.
Which is coming anyhow.
Except we're in a slightly better position now than we would have been under this deal of the century that he proposed. So we have to remember that as good as we think as supportive as we hope the American president is, they have their own vested interests, and they aren't always aligned with ours. In fact, they're very rarely aligned with ours. So Joe Biden, O'Biden, as I would call him, is no friend of ours at all.